Okay, so the first question is, that I totally forgot to ask you last time, is what island did you live on in Hawaii?
Oh, the Big Island. They call it the Big Island because that's one of the biggest island on the whole island chain.
Yeah.
So it's a big island, and I live in a little town in Pahala. It's a sugar plantation town where everybody works for the plantation. Yeah.
And you said that your grandparents were born in Japan but moved to Hawaii?
Well, I don't know how long they were in Hawaii, because right after that they went back to Hawaii. So they basically went to Hawaii to work. That's their job. They're always looking for a job too. So they worked at the plantation. And
So they both came from Japan to work
Yeah.
on the plantation
yeah,
at the same time?
That part I really don't know,
Mm-hmm.
because all I know that they were in Hawaii, and that's where my parents were born. So somehow they got to the same place and worked in the same place, and eventually they all went back to, I take that back. I think my grandmother stayed back in Hawaii. I think she passed away because they have a gravesite for her in Hawaii. I visited her. So my mother showed me, said, oh, this is where my mother is buried. So that's how I knew that they were there. So my grandmother didn't go back. I don't know about my grandfather, where he's buried.
So both men and women were working on the plantations for like a really long time?
Yeah, they were all, they all raised sugar on that island. So they all worked. They all went to Hawaii on a boat and worked for the sugar plantation. It was just one big boss. I forgot the name of it. But anyway, the island it's big. However, each little town, and they all have, different names. And my parents were born in a city called Honolulu. Then after staying there for a few years, of course, I had my brother, my sister, my brother, and actually my 4 brothers and 2 sisters were born in Honolulu. And then from there they went to Pahala, another little sugar plantation town. And they didn't have any cars back then. So my thought is, how did they travel?
Yeah.
I have to ask my oldest brother.
Were they really far apart, the towns?
Yeah, you need a car to get to that place. I don't know how far it is, because from my town of Pahala to Hilo, the next town is like, must be about 80 miles.
Wow, yeah.
So you can, so, but back then, when I was growing up, they did have a taxi service. So if you call them, he can either pick you up at home and take you to Hilo, and that trip took about probably maybe 30 minutes, not 30 minutes, an hour, at least an hour to get there. So, but like I said, I can't recall how they travel.
Mm-hmm.
It's a small town, and everybody knew each other. Living in Pahala, and of course, like I'm sure I mentioned to you, they all have clusters of people living in each area, and the plantation built their homes. It was all paid for by the company that they worked for. So basically, it was sort of rent free. Yeah, but we still had to eat, so they grew vegetables and yeah. And my mother loved to, plant flowers and vegetables. So some of our meals were from our garden, and she loved to garden. So,
So what kind of things did you do for fun when you were growing up?
basically, just going to school and whatever activities that they provided, and it'll be all the sporting activities. Because the school, we all had our athletic program, so it was, softball, base, I don't think we had football. Football was still kind of new yet, so we didn't have football, and we did have baseball and basketball. Basketball and baseball was basically the things, and the town did have. We didn't have bowling alley. I can't remember, but we did have a theater, so we did go to the movies, and we had a nice gymnasium, so we used to have dances, But other than that, we didn't have any swimming pool, so we didn't. We just went to the beach. But even with the beach, I still didn't know how to swim. I never learned how to swim. So it was funny because even to go to the beach, you have to take the whole class or whatever to the beach, right? No transportation, right? So what we did, we got on the cane truck. This cane truck was used to transport all the cane they harvested. They loaded on the cane truck. That was our mode of transportation. Because going to school, we all walked to school, and most of them walked barefooted, and it was And when it rained, we just had to cover ourselves with whatever available. But it rained pretty well. But there was another school that was located maybe 30 miles away from our school, and at least they had a bus, so they were transported to our school, and that bus driver stayed there all day until school was over and took them back. But the other people who lived up the mountains, closer to the mountains, they have homes up there, they got transported on a cane truck. That was it, and it was accepted because that was the only way they can go. So
So you had six siblings?
7.
7.
Yeah.
Were y'all really close in age, or were you particularly close with some of them, or?
Yeah. Well, we were like 2 years apart, so we kind of helped each other. Yeah. But I remember my oldest brother. I asked him, because my mother had a store, and she managed the store. So I said, how did she manage the store, taking care of the 7 kids and still work at the store? So he told me he's the one that was the babysitter. Yeah, I didn't know that. So that was interesting. Yeah, I was a babysitter. So I'm sure he did a lot. Maybe that's why he knows how to cook.
So a lot of your siblings stayed in Hawaii. Do you,
Yeah, we stayed there practically all our lives until we graduated from high school. Once we got out of high school, we moved on to the other island, to the island of Oahu. And that's where they're the biggest city, and they have, colleges, and so I ended up going to a business college for a year.
Where was that?
In Honolulu. Yeah. So what we did, because we couldn't afford any apartment like they do it here, we worked for our room and board. We somehow my older sister found a place for us to work for a family, and we lived with them and worked for our room and board. So we stayed there, went to school from there. The family fed us. Of course, we had to help with all the chores and did the housework, babysat. And one thing good was that they took us to school, because there was, being in a bigger city, they had buses. So the family took us downtown where the school is and stayed there until we were ready to come home. Then we took the bus home. Yeah. And we did a lot of walking from one place to another, because there was no connection from this bus to the next bus and going on. But we did a lot of walking. Yeah.
What was the name of your business school?
Called Cannon School of Business. Yeah. And this was like a regular business building that they converted to a school. So we had classes upstairs, and this they taught accounting, typing, shorthand, and yeah, that's about it.
So after that year, that's when you moved to California?
I worked, after I graduated from that school, I worked 3 or 4 years, and then I came out here. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But a bunch of your siblings still live in Oahu?
Back then, yeah. But the only sibling I have left is just one brother.
And he lives?
He lives on the island of Oahu. Mm-hmm. And I still have another sister living on the Big Island. Mm-hmm. Then I lost one brother, my older brother and my younger sister. So I lost another sister. So I lost 2 sisters and 1 brother. So then I have another sister up north in the Turlock area, and she's got Alzheimer's. So her daughter is taking care of her. But she did live on the island of Oahu, and then until after, when her husband passed away, I guess that was a downfall, because from that point on, I guess she started to have symptoms of dementia and Alzheimer's, and it progressively got worse. So the other, her other daughter decided to take care of her in Turlock. Yeah.
So have you been back to visit Hawaii a lot since you left?
Oh yeah. I've been back there to, visit the family, visit my classmates, and, we have class reunions, so we went to that. So that was fun. Yeah. I remember going to that one, our 50th class reunion a few years back. And so that basically was our last one, and we haven't had one. The only mini reunion would be in Las Vegas. Yeah. So.
Are there certain things you miss about living in Hawaii, or is there any specific reason that you wanted to move to California?
Not really. I just figured, it was time to move on, so I decided to. And because of the fact that my younger sister was already out here, I had a good chance to move in with her. So if she wasn't here, I probably would have stayed back. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So what kind of job did you have when you moved to California?
Office. I worked as a secretary. My first job was here for a chain of ladies' clothing, and this company had about 8 or 9 chain throughout. I wouldn't not that far away, like Ventura and Porterville and Santa Barbara and all that. So I worked at the main office, and it was a small office, but I managed to stay with them, and then the company closed and moved to another area. So I moved. My job was, I got a job downtown LA, so I worked there. But before that, of course, I got married, and trying to figure out, when I got married.
What did your husband do?
He was self-employed as a gardener, because after, I think I mentioned to you that he was in the internment camp, so they had a struggle too. When they return, they have to relocate and find their own homes, and I don't know how they ended up in Monrovia, because that's where I live in Monrovia. But so after we got married, I moved to Monrovia with my husband, because he already had a house. But they bought a house, and they didn't have much choice as to the location or what type of house. Yeah, they just took whatever that was available. So it was a struggle, but somehow they managed. It was just his parents and my husband. So,
No, how did you meet him?
well, I was still living in LA, yeah, with my sister and her roommate. Somehow we all, uh, socialized with, met friends, and I think I was the first one who got married and moved out. So we all ended up getting married, all three of us, and went on our separate ways and raised our families.
So it was you, your sister, and who was the third?
My roommate Helen, yeah. So, but this was my younger sister. She passed on, unfortunately, quite early, but I'm still in touch with Helen, yeah. So, but
And you still worked after you were married?
after we were married, yeah, I worked a few years. Then I started a family. When I was raising my family, I think I stayed home for about 14 years, raised the kids, and finally got to a point where my husband said, "Oh, I have to go back to work." So I took up some brush-up courses and, looked for a job. And so I worked for, temporary jobs, a week here, a week there, and finally ended up with this company called Ford Aerospace in Pasadena. And I liked that place. They liked me. I did a good job. So I said, "Oh, why don't we hire her?" So I ended up working there for about 4 years. And then I moved on. I moved on to in Monrovia, because we were in Monrovia. And I forgot to tell you, I learned how to drive when my daughter was 6 months old, because when you have kids, you have to take them to the doctor, right? And my husband couldn't take them because he's working, so I ended up learning how to drive, got my license, and took him to the doctors, and eventually took him to the school activities for the children. So.
Was it hard getting around before? Because I feel like public transport in LA is notoriously so bad.
Yeah, well, back then it wasn't so bad at all. All you did was get on the bus in a certain corner, and you just ride the bus to downtown, and as long as you don't have to transfer to another bus to get to your destination, it's okay. But this one job that I had, since it moves further south, I had to, transfer to another bus, get downtown, catch the bus, transfer to another bus, and go further south. And so it took me maybe an hour to get there and an hour to come home. But the traffic is not it was good, There were a lot of cars, and they had those buses, I guess they call that. But it was okay. Of course, I didn't know any better than what it is today. If you compare it to today, it's you wouldn't want to drive now. Although now that you can drive, you don't want to do that. Yeah. But anyway.
So while you were raising your children, did your husband continue working as a gardener?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And does your husband ever talk about his experience in internment, or no, not really?
He was in camp, and of course the whole family. When you're with a family, somehow the family likes to stay together in the same camp because they know each other, so they feel more comfortable staying with their family. But as far as being in camp, he hadn't said too much about it. Although I did visit the camp quite a few years ago when of course the camp was closed and there's nothing to reveal that it was a camp. It was completely bare. But it was quite a shock to me to visit a place, way out in Arizona, and for them to live out there for I don't know how many years. But it was a hot, desolate desert area. But somehow they managed. But when he got released, instead of coming home, he decided to go to Chicago, and went to Chicago to work out there. So their choice, somehow, I don't know how they got there, by bus or train. I think he said he went on a train. And anyway, he stayed there a few years. I worked as a busboy I remember he said, at a hotel in Chicago. And somehow, I guess, where he lived, I don't recall where he lived. But the one thing good about a hotel was he worked as a busboy in a restaurant, so he had free meals. So that helped. But I don't know what changed his mind to come home, but he finally came home and, stayed with his parents and worked with them. So,
When you went to visit the camp, did you go by yourself, or you didn't go with him, did you?
Oh, he came. I mean, we went, there was a period where I think we had about 20 buses going to the camp just for, I wouldn't say celebration, just to visit that area and then later on go to a hotel and had a banquet. And, so a lot of people remember that area, and it's interesting to see them, to reminisce as to what area their barracks were. And so, this is where it was, and this is camp so-and-so, and they all have numbers. So they would call, oh yeah, I was in this area. And they would start reminiscing all the things that happened while they were in camp. So from camp he went to Chicago. Then he came home to Monrovia. Yeah.
So I assume it was easier to find work in Chicago than it was here.
That I wouldn't know. They probably just took whatever that was available.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, it's just a matter of survival. But they managed, and they have their memories of good times and bad times. You know. But I think their mode of transportation was on the train. I think they got on the train to go and come back.
Do you think internment had a bigger effect on the generation older than you, like the parents?
Oh yeah. Because I have no experience being in a camp.
Yeah.
Yeah. But for them to be suddenly uprooted from their homes with just whatever they can carry, so it was quite a change, and I'm sure it was quite a struggle. So when I first moved here to California, I met a lot of these people, and as soon as I meet some of these people, first thing they'll say is, "What camp were you in?" They want to know the connection as to what camp they stayed during the war. So that was interesting, and I felt kind of left out because here I am from Hawaii, didn't go to camp. You hear all these people, in California. They all shared their experience in their camp. So
There are only so many. I feel like there must be like a lot of people who
yeah.
met each other and.
Yeah, eventually they would meet somebody if they recognize the name of the camp. Said, "Oh, yeah, I was there," So then they'll say, "Okay, what camp and what block and exactly where they lived."
Yeah.
Yeah. So I kind of felt left out. I said, "Oh, I didn't go to camp," so I kind of.
You make it sound like you didn't go to summer camp. The way you said
I felt like an outsider, listening to all these people that went to camp, but yeah.
Do you want to take a little 5-minute break? And then
Oh, okay. Look at it.